The following program is brought to you in part by the film Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace.
Welcome to another Leon Charney Report. We have a really eclectic and exciting show tonight.
My name is Itai Anghel. I'm a correspondent and a documentary filmmaker for the Israeli television Channel 2. Most of my work is being done in places where conflicts take place. My recent journeys took me to the front line against ISIS. Actually, I've been 5 times in Iraq, 3 times in Syria. There have been a couple of front line. The latest one, a month and a half ago, was in a place called Kobani, which is near the Euphrates River. And over the Euphrates River, you saw Jarablus, which is the next city of ISIS. And if you look down, this is Raqqa, which is the capital of ISIS in Syria. So the people I've been hanging with, the guerrilla Kurdish men and women fighters, their next idea is to go on Raqqa. The US has been bombing Kobani, the city in northern Syria, in order to help the Kurdish militia, the Kurdish guerrilla, which is called YPG, to take it over from ISIS and to run ISIS away. But they haven't been doing too much in order to help the Kurds, and they will never recognize the Kurdish entity in Syria, even in Iraq, for the simple reason that they wouldn't like to make Turkey angry. Everything is because of Turkey. I mean, the United States and Turkey, are in the same organization of NATO. The US, in order to make these bombardments, use a Turkish airbase by the name of Incirlik. You don't want to make Turkey angry. According to Turkey, the Kurdish guerrilla by the name of PKK in Iraq and YPG in Syria are a terrorist organization. So, you want to be a friend with me, you want to do business with me, you have to acknowledge that the Kurdish guerrilla are terrorists. According to the US, according to the EU, the Kurdish guerrilla is a terrorist organization. So look at the hypocrisy of everything. The United States is assisting the Kurdish guerrilla because they are the only people they can work with. They are not fanatic, there is a complete equity between men and women fighters over there, something which is very rare in the Middle East and in the Arab world. And you can completely trust their capabilities as fighters. So this is the only organization that you, as the United States, can really rely upon. But you still call them terrorists in order, to keep Turkey happy. If you hang around in these places with the Kurds, they will tell you, Turkey is ISIS and ISIS is Turkey. No messing around, with terminology about it. It doesn't go out. For example, the Battle of Kobani, it is on the border of Turkey. The border, is relatively simple to cross. Where the jihad is coming from, inside Syria. They're crossing from Syria. They're crossing to Syria from Turkey. It's not so complicated. If you want to get in Syria, it's not a big problem, to get in. The border, is not so strict. A lot of fighters in ISIS are Turkish fighters. And specifically about Kobani, it is on the border with Turkey. So you can imagine the Kurds fighting from 3 sides, ISIS, managed to beat them, to the left, to the right, and downwards. And all of a sudden, they are coming from the north. But in the north, it is Turkey. Yeah, ISIS in Turkey come and make their biggest attack, killing hundreds of Kurds in Kobani by penetrating from Turkey. When you work there, whoever you ask, among the Kurdish guerrilla, among the Kurdish citizens, Turkey is ISIS, ISIS is Turkey. I have my doubts about it, but according to them, this is it. And this is a game of hypocrisy that everybody is playing, because we are fighting, the war against ISIS. We are the only group who managed to take land from ISIS, consequently, throughout the year. They managed to take 300 kilometers from ISIS. And the US helped them by bombarding, some places of ISIS. So you're helping me, but you still regard me as a terrorist organization in order not to make the Turks angry.
Islamic State shoots and kills everything that moves. They're spreading in all directions, and the world so far fails to react. We are seeing the story through the eyes of the only fighters that for the moment stop them on the ground. Kurdish men and women soldiers in Syria and Iraq. We begin where they begin, in this base in northern Syria, where Kurdish guerrilla fighters are celebrating the end of a boot camp. At just 17 years old, this is what they look like before they are soon to be deployed to the front.
I see here quite a lot of women in here. Women are fighting like men in the PKK?
They're fighting better than men, not just like men. They fighting better than lots of men.
Really?
Yeah, because they have good teacher and they know what they're fighting for.
It's interesting, because normally, Daesh treat women as if they are not human beings.
To be honest, they cannot stand for our women. They're running from our women.
Undoubtedly, one of the most affecting forces in the fight against ISIS are the Kurdish women guerrilla fighters. I mean, to begin with, when you join the guerrilla, you join for life. It's not, for 4 or 5 years. You do it for life. You're not allowed to have a husband, to make a family with kids. By the way, a male as well. You're not entitled to have a wife or a family, because according to them, this is our war, either of our independence or this is our Holocaust. So, a woman, a Kurdish woman, to begin with, she is a great fighter. Then, you're fighting an organization, a jihadist Salafist organization, that goes by the rules of the Sharia, which is the most fanatic interpretation of the Islam law. According to this idea of Sharia, if you are being killed in a holy war, which is called jihad, you go to heaven. In heaven, you get 72 virgins, among other things, This is the place to be. So you cannot threaten me by telling me, I'm going to kill you. Oh, please come over. They would love, the idea that the US would bring, paratroopers inside Syria or Iraq. It coincides, with their idea of, the apocalypse. But there is a problem. Because according to this Sharia, a woman is not equal to men. Is sort of a subhuman, according to the Sharia of ISIS, not the Islam Sharia in general. So, if a woman kills you, your death is not so glorified. And here is the catch. A woman kills you, there is no heaven for you. So it comes out that ISIS, whenever they have an encounter with Kurdish women and men forces, initially they try to fight and to kill the women. Because if a man, Kurdish, would kill me, I would go to heaven. But if a woman kills me, I'm dead, I'm really dead, and that's it. So, the irony that the Kurdish women are more frontline than the men. And the Kurdish women know that ISIS is really losing it, even practically speaking, handling the weapons, psychologically speaking. They are being deteriorated, within the presence of women. So they make a notice, hey, we are here. They have sort of a shout. It is called tilili, something like li. But, I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, I cannot do it, properly. But, whenever they hear it, they understand women are in the area and they are losing it. It is amazing.
Today, Media is one of the top commanders of the Kurdish guerrilla fighters, and therefore one of the most wanted by ISIS, which doesn't seem to bother her too much.
او پیوست که ما بناسه نبری هاتیه جمعه یعنی ام به حسی خواه باورن و به قواتا گلی خواه اپشت خواه باورن کی به گوتی چاویویش کسیه جوانه او هزم پروپاگاندا داعشه گرمزاتن یک شر داعش هری اساسی جی لسر چپمنی دمشه او پروپاگاندا و تام ترسیب پر هزی وای برخودان اینینه.
And it is something, you know, that bears a lot of consequences way beyond, you know, the front line of ISIS. It is an idea. And this is how you fight ISIS, because ISIS is an idea. It is not only a caliphate and a territory, it is an idea. Even if you manage to take over the caliphate and to cut it, and to inflict a lot of losses, you know, and to diminish the size of this territory, it will still remain as an idea. You know, there is a possibility, the way I see it, that ISIS will lose someday its capital in Syria, Raqqa, or its capital in Iraq, Mosul. And then, you know, within days, there would be an enormous attack on the city of London. And people would say, hey, I thought ISIS is gone. No, the idea will exist forever, because it has to do with God, the interpretation of God. This idea never dies, unfortunately. I don't think, you know, that because of the setbacks that took place, ISIS decided to attack Paris, because you need to plan such an attack, you know, way, way, way in advance. You know, it takes months in order to prepare it. So they started to prepare it before they had these setbacks. Then you have to ask, why Paris? Because according to the idea of ISIS, I built a caliphate. Caliphate, the last caliphate took place 99 years ago. It was the Ottoman Empire. For them, they have to bring the Ottoman Empire back. I mean, I'm just trying to bring back, you know, the situation that took place in here. You, the Western powers, messed everything up. You invented, you know, sovereign state, like Syria, Iraq. I have to bring back the normality. You made a mess in here. So I built a caliphate. No borders, only big caliphate. A Muslim empire.
If at first we thought that ISIS was just another rogue terrorist organization, now we know it has a distinct agenda. They initially defined the borders of the country as Iraq and Sham, which includes Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel. And up until now, they astonished even themselves with the speed in which it took place. Over the past year, in a blitz unlike any this region has ever known, ISIS occupied huge chunks of Syria and Iraq. They took over huge caches of weapons and war materials, dozens of oil fields, and in the name of pure Sunni Islam, as they interpret it, they demolish anything who is unlike them. Christians, Yazidis, Shia Muslims, and Sunni Muslims who they deem not pure enough.
According to the Sharia law, a caliphate considered to be a caliphate when it has a territory. If you don't have a territory, only idea, the way Al-Qaeda is. Al-Qaeda never had a, you know, defined territory. You didn't have like an office of Al-Qaeda. Here you have offices of ISIS, ministries of ISIS, chunks of territory that belong to ISIS, to their caliphate. You have somewhere to go to and to fight for. Now, if you are fighting and try to disturb my expansion, and you try to kill my territory, then you are an enemy. So to begin with, unlike Al-Qaeda, you know, they were not interested in attacking the United States, Israel, Europe. No, I have only my immediate enemy, you know, within the caliphate, whether they are Kurdish Yazidis, or Muslim, Shia Muslims, or Christian within the caliphate. These are my enemies. I'm not interested, you know, in the show-off of 9/11 style. But when foreign fighters, you know, assist the people who would like to kill my territory, then they become a relevant enemy. So once friends, you know, join the fight against my caliphate, it is an immediate enemy and I have to attack it. It was not the idea in the first place. Now it is the target. United States is a target. ISIS is a state. I mean, it is very, it hurts to admit. It hurts to admit. But it is a state, whether you like it or not. I mean, we should not acknowledge it, but de facto it is a state. It has a territory. It is functioning. Obviously, they took everything by force against all the international laws and the norms. But it functions de facto as a state. And they don't give a damn about your idea of what state is and supposed to be, what is a sovereign state, what is international law. I mean, to begin with, the creation of what you call the state was a sin, heresy. So I have to destroy it and to bring back, the glory past. That was the reality. You made problems with the reality. So your definition of what is states and what is law is irrelevant, for my cause. There's no place for negotiations in here. I have a caliphate, I have an Islamic state. It is a state. To begin with, the caliphate. We mentioned the last caliphate, which is the Ottoman Empire. But way largest caliphate took place in here. One of them stretched from Spain to India. This is more like the idea of ISIS. This is the minimum, of the idea of my caliphate, because I would like to take the world. It has to be much wider, much bigger than the Ottoman Empire. And even concerning, our interpretation of Islam and Sharia, it would be much more fanatic. This is my idea of caliphate, all the world. It coincides with the idea of the apocalypse, and the Messiah will come, and the false Messiah that would come beforehand. Now, you ask whether I could negotiate with the state, with the caliphate, whether there can be a peace accord. A peace, permanent peace is nothing, that they would consider. The only thing that you can achieve is something that is called hudna. Hudna is temporary. The only time, that Israel managed to have some peace that you can really trust with Hamas organization, for example, is a hudna. Because hudna is not that, I give away and I compromise my way because I'm not allowed as a Muslim to do it, because you're a heresy. But when I say, for the time being, I will kill you later, I will burn you later, but for the time being, we can be in peace. You can be in peace for 2 weeks. You can be in peace, for 2 years maybe. This is the idea. By the way, this is a good idea, for a conflict. If you look at Northern Ireland, I think what's brilliant in Northern Ireland, that their accord, the Good Friday Agreement, is not to do something, permanently. They knew that they are messing, with two communities which are a bit crazy. So let's say, temporarily, this is the idea. Later on, we can change it. We can make a census, we can make another referendum, the future of the Northern Ireland would be decided later on. But for the time being, but till then, nobody will get killed. Almost nobody will get killed. So you need, in order to negotiate with them, something, that might take place in the very far future, to think about hudna. Hudna means for the time being. But again, if you look at their logic and their laws, there always needs to be at least one front being battled. You cannot have udnas all around your frontiers. At least one frontier should be fought, should be a battle. I mean, it is very strict. There are no interpretation for anything like it. So I can, for the time being, keep this border quiet. For the time being, I can keep this frontier quiet, but some frontier, some front line needs to be battled. It is a law. This is their interpretation, of creating a caliphate. You should do it and break through by battling. Not like now there is a time of peace.
אנחנו כרגע בחזית מול דאעש, אנחנו בקירקוק, ו-400 מטר מאיתנו מוצב של דאעש. והחיילים האלה, הכורדים של ה-PKK, לקחו אותנו כאן לקו הראשון בחזית כדי לראות איך הם מתקיפים את הבית של האמיר. השם של האמיר הוא סדאם, אתמול הם הצליחו להרוג את הבן שלו, וכרגע הם מכוונים אל המפקד של המוצב של דאעש שמולנו.
يلا بركة بيت شاط راس تماما للجول بالجول بيعنيك.
As you can see, the Kurds' weapons are extremely limited. To this day, they somehow manage to survive, but who knows how long they will hold up when global intervention is lax and thousands of jihadists enlist to ISIS every month. Most of the guerrilla fighters, including the ones we're with, are now concerned by news that is coming in from a different front, the Kurdish enclave of Kobani in Syria. ISIS forces, now laying siege to Kobani from 3 different directions, are forcing their way in and breaching the guerrilla defense lines.
يعني سر مجال كوبانيا تشتكيت ديار كردن جردوي من استراتيجية كشتي جنال يعني شكل كوبانيا تمشاندن يعني بربشاو يعني أشياء أماجد سر شهدفه سر كوبانيا إيرش هي وأم بيجن أماجو هدف ديار بس شكل ودري هيست بيد ديار كردن أم نزي بازد بيز روجة بالخدانية كودري تمشاندن.
Okay, to begin with, when you talk about Sinai, the peninsula, you know, apart specifically from the shore, the Red Sea, which is, you know, the great tourist potential for Egypt, and they will try to guard it as much as they can. Most of, you know, the mainland of Sinai, the peninsula, is ISIS. It is an organization that is called Ansar Bet al-Maqdas, that, you know, in the recent year said, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, you have an army in here. This is like when an organization, you know, pledge alliance to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, and to the idea, they say, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, you have an army in here. So most of Sinai Peninsula now is ISIS. Because Sinai Peninsula is ISIS, and because Sinai Peninsula has a border with Gaza, you have a connection with Gaza. You create tunnels between Sinai to go inside Gaza. The problem is for them that whoever from Gaza is in control of these tunnels is the Hamas. Hamas, by ISIS, considered to be a traitor, heresy. And why is that? Because Hamas, like Fatah, would like to have an independent Palestinian state recognized by the United Nations. If you want to be recognized by world institutions, by the United Nations, not by God, Caliph, by international institution, this is heresy. So they would burn, and they are burning, the Palestinian flag, Fatah flag, and Hamas flag. If you are a Palestinian that join ISIS and the idea of creating a caliphate, then you're a good man. But Hamas is an enemy. Fatah is an enemy. The idea of a Palestinian state is heresy. Practically speaking, I do need to get inside Gaza from Egypt. So then I make deals with the Hamas. You know, money is involved. They are very practical. You know, they even sell oil to Bashar Assad. They are fighting President of Syria, Assad, but they're selling to him oil because Assad is in a need for oil and they're in a need for more money. So I would try to get inside Gaza and little by little to influence more and more people in Gaza to become ISIS. There is a great distress in Gaza. You know, Hamas doesn't provide any answers, you know, for normal people. And in distress, you try to look for something else. ISIS is an idea. More and more people become, you can call it ISIS or ISIS supporter in Gaza. And when Hamas realized that there are pockets of ISIS in Gaza, they would treat them more harshly the way they would treat an Israeli or a Jew.
قبل ما انتبهتوا لداعش شو عملتوا بحياتكم؟
أنا ما كنت اشتغلت
أبدا
لا كنت قاعد بالبيت.
أمير؟
أنا كنت بالمدنية سائق، بعدين انضميت للجيش الحر، وبعدين انضميت للدولة الإسلامية.
نحن لما كنا جيش حر أول شيء طلعنا لنقاتل النظام، بعدين انضمينا لداعش وأخذنا دورات شرعية، درسونا حسب ما فهمنا أنه الأكراد كفرة والمسيحية نصارى وحلال قتلهم ولازم نقتلهم كلهم.
طلق كم واحد تقريبا وذبح كم واحد تقريبا؟
والله قتل طلقة شيء 10 15.
والذبح كم واحد؟
5 6.
كلهم كانوا أكراد؟
أكراد ومسيحية وعرب مشكل.
مرات كنا ناخذ حبوب. إيه يعني في مرات لما تاخذ الحبة ما بتعرف شو بتعمل.
حبوب هلوسة يعني
بتقتل الناس كثيرة من دون اللي متذكرهم أنا من دون الحبوب 3 بس اللي لما باكل حب ما بعرف.
How did you feel when you killed the people? You felt good?
ما عدم مبالاة.
لا مبالاة. يعني كنت تنبسط ولا كنت تحزن؟
لا انبسط.
انبسط.
إيه لأني قتل.
وأنت أمير؟
انبسط إني أقتل كفرة.
حسين أنت بتعتقد إنك لما تنقتل بالمعركة راح تروح على الجنة وفي حوريات؟
إيه.
أمير؟ نعم. فيها حسب ما يقولون لنا بالشريعة أنها 72 حورية قدامك وفيها كل شيء متوفر لك، يعني أحسن من الدنيا.
هم الشهداء الشعب يقولون يعني اعتقادي يعني نروح للجنة.
إذا قتلتك امرأة تروح على الجنة ولا لا؟
لا.
No.
Something that the world should recognize. You know, it is difficult to acknowledge, but Syria doesn't exist anymore. The idea of Syria doesn't exist anymore. By the way, it doesn't matter, you know, whether Bashar Assad will remain in power or he will be ousted. No one will be able to govern Syria as the state we knew it. You know, it is torn into dozens of areas of control, dozens of organizations, militias, sub-militias. It does not exist. Even Assad himself, what he is interested in now is to have a control of about 25% of the country. You know, it's big cities and the territory of Latakia, where his native community, the Alawites, are coming from. He's not interested really, you know, in the rest of Syria. Russia, Putin's Russia, came in order to help him gain it. Russia has a big military base in Latakia on the shore. It is called Tartus. It is the only base that the Russians have outside, you know, ex-Soviet Union, and they would like to keep it. So they would like to keep Assad in power. They are filling the void, you know, of the lack of intervention by the United States or the West in general. And people say, you know, Putin is the man, Putin would kill ISIS, Putin would make order. Okay. Now, the idea of a Russian man that thinks that he can do whatever he wants against me, a Muslim jihadist, is not happening, you know, the first time. It took place in 1979. 1979, the Soviet Union, invaded Afghanistan, and they decided to ask someone in order to bring and to maintain the communists in power in Afghanistan. You know, they were the biggest army or the second biggest army in the world. So there was not a real competition. There was not a real possibility, you know, for them to be defeated. However, they were defeated by Muslim jihadists who came from all over the world. This was the first successful idea of jihad in modern times. Muslims coming from all over to fight against all the odds and manage to make it. So here it happens again. A Russian man thinking that he can do whatever he wants, invade a Muslim territory in order to decide who will be in control. So a lot of people are not being frightened by this intervention. You know, it's sort of an incentive. This is the time for me to go. You know, to relive our glory past, you know, the day we managed to beat the Soviets. So this is a beginning, and with all the earth power, you know, that you have of the Russians, you know, it is very impressive, but this is a beginning. You know, a lot of people are watching it, you know, is invading my holy caliphate, this is the time for me to go in. You cannot win a war by bombing from the air. We Israelis know it the best, We cannot beat Hezbollah, we cannot beat Hamas, unless, you go inside with very heavy forces. No one is willing to do it. It looks very frightening, and the power from the air is enormous, but you cannot win a land, only from the air, not in this region. A lot of Chechens are in ISIS now. And by the way, the idea of Putin, and he's right about it, that he has to fight not only for the sake of maintaining Bashar Assad in power, his friend, but to fight these jihadists, because when they will finish Bashar Assad, the next target is go upstairs to Russia, because Russia have, autonomies and territories. One of them is called Chechnya, one of them is called Ingushetia, one of them is called Dagestan, Kabardino-Balkaria. They are mainly Muslims. So again, these Muslims are being governed, by a heresy of Putin's government. We need to make it part of our caliphate. So we would like to fight them, Putin, when still they are far from his borders. This is why I get it. The Chechens who are fighting in Syria on behalf of ISIS, even by the terms of the cruelty of ISIS, they're considered to be even worse. The way I see it, according to the US perception, you have two bad guys. One of them is Bashar Assad. I want to throw him out. Then I have these people of ISIS who came only later. After I decided that Bashar is a bad guy, something came up by the name of ISIS. I didn't know it before, this thing of ISIS. So I want to throw ISIS out. Now, as United States, I've been in Afghanistan 14 years. I've been in Iraq 10 years. The idea of sending again troops on the ground, it is virtually impossible. It's suicidal. This slogan, no American boots on the ground, it has a sense. So I would like, to bomb and give assistance from the air. But as we know in this region, you cannot win a battle from the air, so you need ground forces. So it won't be my American forces, so I need allies. I can trust the Kurds, but the Kurds are interested, in a very specific region of their own, Kurdistan. They won't go too deep where ISIS is. Then I need another force. So if I think Islamic State, ISIS, is a Sunni force, the rival would be a Shia force. The biggest Shia empire is Iran. I need Iran. They can help the Shia forces of Iraq to become much stronger. I would never reveal, that I know that Iranians are in Iraq fighting ISIS, but I have to support it. So it's not only, about the nuclear thing. Here in Israel, we didn't understand it, Bibi is going to the Congress and shouting, but, they were not thinking about Israel at that time. They needed allies on the ground in Syria and Iraq against, ISIS. I need the Shia force. I need the force of Iran. So Israel can shout. We were not the first priority, not even the second or the third. We need Iranians now because we need Shia forces. And it might work. Just recently, they managed to recapture a city of Ramadi, the Iraqi army. No one really think, that it was only the Iraqi Shia army, because it is a very poor army. It is supported by Iranian forces and Iranian weapons. And this is your chance to have more battles, won against ISIS later on. And the biggest battle in Iraq, which be on Mosul. So, you need to have the Shia. You needed to have, as a US, a pact with Shia, with the forces on the ground, given that you're not sending a real mass, of troops, American troops on the ground. Again, Iraq does not exist anymore. Like Syria, Iraq doesn't exist. It is comprised by three entities. You have the Kurds in the north, you have the Sunnis in the middle, and you have the Shia, the greatest majority, in the south. Like, the neighboring empire, Iran. Iran would like to have Iraq as a whole as a Shia entity. Now, this is why they are helping the Shia government in Baghdad, and they are supporting it against ISIS, because ISIS is a Sunni. Now, when a Shia force like the Iraqi Shia army and the Iranian Shia forces get into a Sunni city like Ramadi, or maybe it would be later Fallujah, they're not just, conquering the city. They make horrible thing to the Sunni community, sort of a revenge to what ISIS has done to them. So if you are a Sunni, not a fanatic Sunni that want to burn people alive or to cut their heads, and you don't like ISIS, but you would prefer to be with ISIS and not to be under this Shia, that sees you as someone who is a brother of ISIS and need to be killed or tortured or whatever. You have Sunnis in Iraq, Shia in Iraq, and Kurds that managed to make their state, Kurdistan, in the north. As an Americans, you cannot acknowledge the idea of Iraq doesn't exist anymore, because then it would be sort of your fault, because you invaded in 2003, you threw out Saddam Hussein, the only man who could keep together these three entities of Kurds, Sunnis, and Shia. So it is your responsibility now to maintain the stability of Iraq. You did it as an American. You stayed there for 10 years, but then you went away. Everything is being dissolved nowadays. Iraq doesn't exist anymore, practically speaking. As an American official, you cannot acknowledge it. So you want still Iraq to exist. Later on, the northern part of Iraq would call himself Kurdistan, Free Kurdistan. Already, in northern Syria, you have Kurdistan. They managed to take territories from ISIS. You will not acknowledge it. You would not acknowledge the Kurdish entity in Iraq because you wouldn't like to say an American, Iraq doesn't exist anymore because of my invasion in 2003. And you wouldn't like to acknowledge that Syrian part of Kurdistan because I don't want to make the Turks angry. They are part of my organization in NATO. I use their air bases. I wouldn't like to make Turkey angry by acknowledging that there is a Kurdish state. Because the Kurdish state is not something that you have only in Syria and Iraq. The biggest chunks of Kurds in the world, between 15 and 20 million, are in Turkey. And they would say, we managed to get it. It's a boost for the morale. We managed to have a state in Iraq and in Syria. Maybe now it's the time to make something in Turkey. They comprise more or less 20%, of the population and the land of Turkey. It is a big chunk. It is a big threat for Turkey. So Turkey now is waging war against the Kurds. You as an American cannot say that they are doing something bad. In order to have a legitimacy of the world, the Turks would say, hey, by the way, I'm invading Syria and Iraq because I want to fight ISIS. Which is a joke. Because if you watch what is going on, they are fighting Kurds like hell. They're not hurting really ISIS. But this is where you get your legitimacy, in order to make a big war and a big battle. Look at it. As I told you, my first idea as a caliphate is to maintain my borders. So I would fight whoever is disturbing my territory. I'm not interested in the US, Israel, Paris, or Russia. Only my immediate enemies, Yazidis, Shia, Christians, whatever. But when Paris, when France, helping the people to cut and kill my caliphate, when Russians are coming and helping my enemies, to destroy my caliphate, then they become my immediate enemies. Therefore, the attacks in Paris are attacks on people who fight in order to kill my caliphate. Russian, how can I attack the Russians? I will not do it in Russia. They have a Russian airline coming from Sinai. I control Sinai. Then, blowing a Russian airline, and I kill, the tourism in Egypt. No tourists arrive, in Sinai after the bombing of the Russian airline. So it is a blow to Egypt, my enemy, a blow to Russian. And all the world is saying, we will not, being threatened by terror. We will keep on doing and living our life. No, it's not. You're afraid to come in and put ground forces. There is no tourism in Sinai anymore. It hurts to say, but they manage. They manage the way for the time being. The problem of Israel, that it doesn't really have friends. It has strategic allies. For example, once we helped the Kurds, they were friends. But when Iran, back then it was the Shah, told us, I don't like it, because it will boost the morale of the Kurds in Iran, we stopped. Then, there was another ally. Turkey became an ally of Israel. So there's a lot of military cooperation between Turkey and Israel, and unmanned aircraft are being sold from Israel to Turkey. And these unmanned aircraft, these drones, are the weapons that the Turks use against Kurds, against Kurdish guerrilla, like the PKK and YPG, which are the only force that can really win against ISIS. So there is an Israeli weapon over there. I once, tried and managed to make an interview with the biggest commander of the PKK, like the most wanted man in Turkey. And he's hiding, he never sleeps in one place. He's in the forest of northern Iraq, on the border with Turkey and Iran. And I managed to get to him. And when I did my way, it took me some days in order to get him, there was bombing all over the forest because of my drones. So I'm going to a place as an Israeli. I hang around in Syria, in Iraq, I have my ways and I have a foreign passport. But the closest I've been, to die was because of an Israeli drone, of my friends and their guidance. Because there would be, even at the most horrible times of the relationship between Turkey and Israel, there would be Yossi and Avi and Israeli fellows, sitting in Istanbul and Ankara and playing with this joystick, explaining to the Turks how to use it and how to bomb Kurdish areas, Kurdish fighters. Because, you need to keep Turkey happy. You cannot say, I don't give a damn about this Turkey. It is so important in this region.